Yeah, I think he's brave. Definitely brave. Because even after everything that happened with his illness, he just kept pushing. Even if he's in pain, he'll still keep a smile on his face.
When I was a young kindergartner, I remembered I thought his funny accent, the compassion that he showed to me as a child and to my classmates, I realize today the impact that that's had upon me.
He describes himself as an observer of miracles, but what he really is an inspirer of miracles.
He draws you into the conversation and he leaves you with his imprint that you are ready to go out and change the world.
He's fierce. Politicians from years before I met him would still quake if he was going to come and advocate for something.
People seem to do things for him without being asked to do it. I don't know, it's a kind of a way he has with people.
He is a living saint to me. I think of his life, and it's overwhelming to me in the sense that he makes you think, if you were good enough, were you fair enough, were you forgiving enough, were you supportive enough, were you generous enough, were you always there when people needed you? And Father's always been there. He's always been there.
Camden is a place, and I think for the most part everyone can say this, it's a place that holds beauty and holds pain. For me, the beauty came after the pain. Growing up was very difficult, growing up with a single mother. We found ourselves in a situation where we were living in people's homes for a little bit, and that ran out, and we moved into a really bad apartment. I mean, it literally had no windows. It had plywood on the windows. The apartment was broken into so many times. I mean, they stole the food out of our refrigerator, and then at that point, then we knew that, we had to move on. We were told to move into a homeless shelter for women. And believe it or not, that was safer than every other place that we lived. So we lived in the shelter, and my mother would still put us on the bus. We would catch the bus up Broadway, get off the bus, go to school. And just as we were normal, just like any other kid, no one knew. It was our secret. No one ever knew about it.
Camden, New Jersey, one of America's poorest tough luck cities. It's a place of much homelessness, a place in which itself is sort of homeless, and which became the unlikely home of a determined Catholic priest who left his Irish homeland 60 years ago. But before Father Michael Doyle found himself amid Camden's decline, the city was an example of economic prosperity. Like Philadelphia just across the Delaware River, Camden thrived, linked by a shared waterway to commerce and culture throughout the world. In the 19th century, poet Walt Whitman lived here, near the bridge that now bears his name. Safe neighborhoods provided workers for booming industries. Campbell's Soup started in Camden in 1891, and RCA Victor was headquartered there. By World War II, Camden's shipyard was the largest in the world. Afterward, the boom went bust. Industries employing thousands closed their doors. The shipyard in 1968, then RCA, then Campbell's Soup. much rushed in to fill the void, such as crime, drugs, violence. Camden's deterioration was not only of its property, but of its people, a deterioration of its very life. Without the dignity of employment, this seemed irreversible. However, some fought to rebuild, including Father Michael Doyle.
The people went away and sent us back their rubbish. They sent us back their trash and their sewage and anything that they didn't want. And then they say to us, well, how come you're not coming back? Well, I want to say you got your foot on my neck. That's why I can't stand up.
He seemed to be very happy when he became ordained and went off to work. It was a big step to go to America, and he went on the SS America. So it was a big thing for him to meet all his uncles in New York. You know, he just had never really traveled before.
Father Michael was my high school teacher once upon a time in 1964. And he had a classroom full of like 45 to 50 girls, which really probably tried his patience. And he was teaching the book of Genesis. And it's something that I guess 14-year-olds are not real interested in. So girls would be passing notes and talking at the same time that he was talking. But I just felt really bad because then he wouldn't express himself by yelling or anything. What he would do is just turn beet red. And then sometimes walk out towards the hallway and then come back and start again because he didn't want to yell at them like other people did, other teachers in the school.
When the New York shipyard went bankrupt, 35,000 workers lost their jobs. As people moved away, poverty increased. Today, 50 years later, the poverty rate is over 1/3 the city's population of 74,000.
Our society, which is not compassionate and open to the poor, has to have a Camden to dump its poor, and then they'll ride by and say, oh my, and hold their nose, because they have... I would like to, for Ash Wednesday, Harry Reasoner, for Ash Wednesday, I would like to get all this dirt that they say is in Camden and just put that on the foreheads of the society and say, think, why is this place the way it is?
He's always been on helping the poor. He's been here in the city of Camden at this parish for over 50 years. And whenever someone in the city or outside the city makes any changes to the city that would affect the people in a negative way, he's always been there.
If you ask me, how did I do in Camden? I would say I failed nicely. I won't accept that I failed badly, but I failed nicely. And I'm happy that I stayed with Camden.
As Father Doyle said, I wish you could see Camden and see the lovely little children who are trying to grow up here in ugly situations, like so many flowers in fields of old tires and broken bottles.
Being in Camden was tough, but he was very happy with the people, and a lot of people needed a lot of help, and he was there to help them and make things better for them if he could.
I see a new pile, and we have a lot of piles in Waterfront South. It's a pile of injustice, on top of injustice, on top of injustice. Tom Corcoran said to me the other day, we are being punished for being a victim. Well, this is America, and we deserve the justice and remediation more than any other area in the United States.
I think the Lord sent him to Camden. The Lord sent him among the poor to take care of us. He gives us the tools to work with, and we work. He just don't hand us food. He show you how to do it. He'll pull his sleeves up, and he'll do it too.
My grandfather was the one who said, he said it often, it's a terrible day, thanks be to God. He would go out to plow or any job, and a half an hour after he had started, the heavens would open, the rain would come down, and it would wet him to the skin. And when it did, he had to leave the field, come into the kitchen, take off his wet cap and shake it into the fire and say, "It's a terrible day. Thanks be to God."
In 1971, a group of Vietnam War opponents staged a raid on Camden's draft board, intending to destroy records. Michael Doyle was a member. The raid was interrupted by the FBI, who had been informed by one of the group's members. At the resultant trial, before all 28 were acquitted, Father Michael Doyle delivered a statement, part of which said, "You have to have imagination to sense the value of life. Law is the banks of the river. The water is life. The stream flows, and the banks must widen if the stream gets fuller. The law must make room for life, and not the other way around, ever."
All my life in this country, I had no respect for war, and I had no respect for draft boards and the way that was going on. No senator's son, no rich person's son in America went to Vietnam. There's a story in the Bible where Jesus is talking to a group in Jerusalem. In the course of his talking, a soldier came up and punched him. Now, he had three choices. He could have punched him back and thrown him into the Mediterranean. Or he could grin and bear it, say nothing. He didn't do either one, but he challenged it. And he said to everybody there, "If I have spoken evil, prove it. And if I haven't, why did you strike me?" So a nonviolent person isn't a zombie, someone who challenges but doesn't strike back.
Father Doyle is a man who has got courage and conviction, unwavering integrity. When there were times that he thought that either myself or my organization wasn't living up to the standard that it should, he was quick to pick up the phone and call me.
Scott Thompson is a great friend of mine, and I asked him one day, how is it that there's a different feeling in law enforcement or police enforcement or police? And he said, well, the change that I think I made was that we have respect for everyone. Respect for everyone.
It didn't matter that we had great history together. It didn't matter what my title was, but it was about right or wrong. And if he felt as though that we were not on the proper side of that, he was going to ensure that he was the advocate for the underrepresented and those that didn't have a voice.
A year after the trial, on November the 11th, 1974, Michael Doyle became pastor of Sacred Heart Church. To this day, as Monsignor, he presides over the church's annual peace gathering, where people pray and advocate for world peace and social justice. That, of course, includes the narrow world around the church and school, which some have compared to a war zone. The message is clear. If you want peace in the world, start in your own home and in your own heart.
The church was built in 1886, built with Trenton brown stone. The homes had coal, and they had coal fires. In time, it turned completely black from the coal fires. It was basically terrible looking. So I had a friend here in the church. His name was Doyle, like my own. He said, the man you need is Othmar Carley. I just loved him from first sight. He was from Austria, and he had a German accent. He loved Sacred Heart, and he would stay in the rectory, and he would entertain us with his stories. He said, art will save us. So then we set out with Othmar. We were in no hurry. We spent 10 years working on the church.
Telling all who would listen, we must preserve, we must strengthen, Father Doyle did not omit his home, the church. The results are for all to admire, as strong and inspiring as the determination of the man who directed them. He continues to oversee vital repairs, but he maintains the constant repair of Sacred Heart's openness and welcome.
Well, I had this little principle, which is my own, and the little principle was...
He wanted his church to be as welcoming as an Irish pub.
Now, what's about an Irish pub? Well, if you go into it, you will be welcomed as if you're one of the family. If you weren't there, you would be missed. And that's where the Irish are. They talk to you, and they see you there, and they want to relate to you, know who you are, where you came from. You want a church like that, because in today's world, there isn't much welcome. You go to a big store, nobody cares. It might be just nice to you, but welcome you in a feeling way. You get that in an Irish pub.
Great memories here as a student at Sacred Heart. I think the more prominent memory is probably the time Mother Teresa visited Camden in 1976. It was a very hot summer day. It was the year that my parents had passed. And I remember being a third grade student and being selected by Father Doyle, Sister Patricia Margaret, at the time to present the lei of flowers to Mother Teresa when she came here to Sacred Heart Church to visit.
I met her in Philadelphia, and I asked her, would she ever come over to a poor town called Camden and speak to the women of Camden? Her response was, I will come.
The church was packed. My grandparents walked me to the front. I remember being a nervous little 8-year-old girl, but somehow I was able to fulfill my assignment and receive the blessing of Mother Teresa. And again, that was at the invitation of Father Doyle.
The one message that she had was these words: keep love alive. It's a great message. Keep love alive.
One of the things that he does is every month he writes a letter. And that letter goes out to all of the people that support him, sponsors. I think they send close to 3,000 letters a year. And his letters are little bits of life, maybe about Ireland, maybe about Camden, poetry.
These letters, like a pub, invite the reader's entry. And as in every pub, there are stories. They reveal Father Doyle's devotion to humanity, his faith, Camden, and of course, his native Ireland. For instance, this excerpt about his family's moving to a new house in 1958. It was a melancholy journey, leaving the old hearth where 5 generations of Doyles were warmed by one continuous fire, and coming into new cold concrete where life would begin again. When all the furniture was transferred, my parents carried out their solemn transition with that splendid sense of the sacred that survives almost always in a peasant people. My father placed the last coals of the old hearth in a bucket. my mother took the large picture of the Sacred Heart down from the kitchen wall, lifted it high, and they walked across the farmland into the new house. The picture was hung, the fire was lit, and life began.
No, what's up? Number 6. Reservation. A Native American reservation. Remember we talked about land that's kind of separate from a town or a community, and it's where all of the Native Americans would live?
They had to. Across the lot from the church is Sacred Heart School, providing an elementary education for 200 children. Adjacent is a preschool. This effort exists in partnership with the children's families, the parish, volunteers, and generous sponsors. Without these sponsors, the school could not survive. Sacred Heart must raise more than $1 million annually beyond what it receives in tuition.
What makes Sacred Heart School unique is we're more of a mission school. We're a Catholic school, but the majority of our students are non-Catholic. And our school is supported through our sponsorship program. And that's the brainchild of Father Michael Doyle.
Father Doyle admits that acquiring the money seems like a recurring impossible struggle, which he, with the help of refrigerators, somehow achieves.
I have no hesitation in asking people to sponsor a child. They do it, and they like doing it, and they get a picture of that child in the mail, and so they have a child on their refrigerator. So we're trying to make the refrigerators of America into billboards for the school, our Sacred Heart School.
It was once at Sacred Heart, they asked the children what they liked about Sacred Heart. And if you would ask that of a child in the suburbs of what they liked about the school, they would probably say their friends, the recess, the sports programs, the gym, and a number of other things. The children here, overwhelming, said they feel safe. That's a little crazy if you think about the children in the city of Camden like the school because it's safe, and the kids in the suburbs are talking about all the other things that we just expect. It's just normal, and the children here don't have it.
A school relying on the dollars and the kindness of strangers, from their hearts to Sacred Heart, on bridges built by Father Doyle.
The Roman Empire wanted to take over the world, and when they came to a fairly decent river, they couldn't cross it. So the bridge builder in the Roman Empire became the most important person in their army. And you can build a bridge with a conversation.
He was worried that his legacy was going to be the closing of Sacred Heart in those times because no one would put any money into the neighborhood, and there seemed to be a plan just to make this an industrial area. It was a really dark time for him. His response being picking up his sword. And his sword is his pen. And he's a writer, and he started writing to politicians and advocating for the neighborhood.
Oh my God, what's that smell? Is that come across the street or the electrical plant or the waste management?
I'll never forget how I first met Father Doyle. I had just been appointed to be the deputy director of the Camden County MUA, and I had asked the executive director if I could be a community liaison to the neighborhood because I felt that we needed to be a better partner, a better neighbor with the community.
Because all of the sewage in Camden County is processed here, there are odors for much of the time, particularly in the summertime. So as some folks like to say, when you flush your toilets in Cherry Hill and Haddonfield, it all comes to Camden.
At this point, this was 1996, the CCMUA had been here 18 years operating the treatment plant with no odor control.
I go to Cherry Hill sometime, go shopping, and when I hit Carmelo Boulevard, I have to close my mouth like this. They don't care because this is Camden.
80 million gallons a day. I see in my mind out there in the suburbs and all over Camden County, there are millions of toilet bowls, and the pipe is just set up for us. And every time you flush, you're saying, to Camden, to Camden, to Camden, to Camden.
The initial reaction of many of the public was, very angry toward the authority and toward me. And I'll never forget that both Father Doyle and his longtime friend Pat Mulligan asked the community to please give me a chance. I was new here.
He was able to get Andy Cricken, who was the operating officer at the CCMUA, to encapsulate the sewage and then find ways to reduce the odor. And it's now 90% down. You come down here years ago, you wouldn't be able to stand it.
I just thought that was so remarkable and amazing because he didn't know me, but the authority had been here 18 years. And the fact that he would have the hope and the faith that a new person would be new and give that person a fresh chance no matter what was just really remarkable. And I appreciated his giving me that chance.
Communication is the key. It's the key to everything. Communication. It's the way in the home. It's the way in the marriage. It's the way in the neighborhood. Communication. People are relating to each other and not living in their house with their doors shut and their blinds pulled and no relationship with anyone. That's not living. Do your bit. That's one of my philosophical statements.
Do your bit. It's all you can do. And what that does for you, what that does for a lot of people is take all the pressure of society off you and really allow you to follow your passion of what you're good at. Do your bit. It's all you can do.
And if everybody did their bit, it would be a better world. You always could do your own bit. B-I-T.
There was a guy named Andy Orsini who lived on Emerald Street in Camden with his wife, Edith. And they were being evicted from a home they had because the owner wanted to sell it and move on. So Andy went over to the church to see Father Michael and say, hey, I'm going to need a home. And he asked him why, and he told him the whole story. And he said, I'm going to go talk to the man. So Father Michael went over and talked to the gentleman, actually bought the house, and then sold it back to Andy, and they paid, I'm sure, a very small amount of money for a long time until they owned the home. So he kind of realized at that point that the strongest thing he could do in this neighborhood was to try to build homeowners and get people in the homes there, because they would take up the responsibility of sweeping the sidewalks and taking care of the streets and doing the town watch and looking after each other. So that's when he had the idea about the Heart of Camden.
We had the crying need, I'll call it, of abandoned houses, windows gone, gaping with need. So I thought if we created like an organization, then maybe we would make some headway.
The organization started out as a volunteer housing organization to provide housing for people who would not qualify for traditional home ownership. It was completely driven by a lot of volunteers, and it was really the vision of Father Doyle.
Fragmented by poverty and the breakup of families and their homes, Camden was indeed in need of Father Doyle's bridges, connecting the city with its people. The Heart of Camden, one of his most successful efforts, has been developing the Waterfront South neighborhood since 1984. That effort has restored and sold more than 250 homes to low and middle-income families. Also renovated were 6 abandoned commercial properties. Each home and property restored, each family and business renewed, became Sacred Heart's bridge towards a better future, a better Camden.
The bridge is this. It's giving someone an opportunity to volunteer in a place that they would never have gone to before.
We lived on the 400 block of Mechanic in South Camden. It's about 2 minutes from here. We applied. They was doing this thing of rebuilding the neighborhood, this thing that Father Doyle wanted to do, that he's been trying for a while. and having people move to the neighborhood to actually make a family in the neighborhood. It wasn't more of a buy and purchase and make money out of it. It was that you purchase, you making a family.
This is what I call home. Like my girls grew up here, so it means a lot to me. It's very special, especially where it's located. I feel like because it's in Camden, we have made it more than what it should be, as structure-wise, environmental-wise, just being part of the community and knowing that it's some place we can always call home is very inspiring to me. I will not move out of here. I think I'm gonna be here forever.
A woman came here, I never met her before. She said to me that she needed to borrow $10. She was at that time living in a woman's shelter. So I gave her $10, with the thought that I might never see it again. That didn't matter at all. It's only $10. 1 week later, she came back here, this woman, to hand me $10. Her name was Olga Morales.
My mother fell behind on tuition payments, so they brought us in, try to figure out, what's going on. Hey, Miss Morales, we know what's going on. And my mother just broke down and told them, I can't afford it. I'm living in a shelter, and they called Father Doyle over, and Father Doyle got involved.
Maybe a week later, a man came into Sacred Heart, and he told me that his mother had died. He said her home that she lived in, he said, it's mine now, he said. And I said, I'd like to give it to someone. Well, I went back in my mind to the woman in the women's shelter, Olga Morales, and our 2 children, and so the next time she came by, guess what I have for you? I have a house.
When Father Doyle found out that we were homeless, living in a shelter, going to Sacred Heart School, it wasn't even a thought. It was just, I have something for you. We walked in and the house literally still had all of the ladies' things in there. And we didn't know whether the son wanted to pick them up and I guess he had picked up all his, all his personal belongings. And he says, no, just, it's yours.
She thought she had gone to heaven.
And so now, not only do we walk into a home that's ours, it's furnished. And so it was huge. It was life-changing for us.
And she took over that house and she raised her 2 children. And then it went on from there, a high school. And after that, he went to college, and today he runs the Heart of Camden. Now that is a story of heaven.
A new chance at health and sports was given to the neighborhood youth through the MJD Fieldhouse, a gymnasium featuring a full-size basketball court built by the Heart of Camden in 2012.
There was nothing for children to do here in this neighborhood. There was nothing but bad activities for them to get involved in, and we needed more than just housing in this neighborhood to make it happen.
The kid can bounce a ball, play volleyball, basketball, get involved, figure out how to be competitive without being destructive.
This is one of his lines, we chip away, that's what we do. And as we were doing a whole lot of other projects, convincing the government to let us try and save the neighborhood, we just kept chipping away until we were able to move back into this building and rehabilitate it into a field house.
He's always got his eye on spaces. And I'm sure this firehouse was on the radar long before we decided to do anything with it.
When the city closed the historic waterfront firehouse engine number 3, Father Doyle and the Heart of Camden saw an opportunity to heat up the local art scene.
You know, he had the imagination, along with some other neighbors and leaders in the community, to imagine how the space could be transformed and brought into a new use.
Camden Fireworks offers exhibitions and cultural events while providing space for art studios.
It's not only about helping people have a house and have a meal, but also to have beauty around it. If you look at this neighborhood, he's created that.
The Center for Environmental Transformation was the Heart of Camden's first non-housing project. The HOC has planted gardens and hundreds of trees throughout the Waterfront South area. The Nick Virgilio Writers House, created by the Heart of Camden, is home of the Nick Virgilio Haiku Society, named after one of America's most respected haiku poets. Virgilio, who spent his entire life in Camden, was a great friend of Father Doyle. Writers visiting the house find an encouraging place to work, while others attend educational programs. The Camden Shipyard and Maritime Museum, established by Father Doyle and the Heart of Camden, teaches the city's schoolchildren the ancient craft of wooden boat building. It also preserves the history of Camden's shipbuilding industry with photos and artifacts. Another of Father Doyle's visions was a theater at the site of an abandoned cafe. In 2010, funded by Pepe Perperno and implemented by the Heart of Camden, the vision became the Waterfront South Theater.
I helped build the theater. Everybody was surprised that I put it in Camden, but nobody would be surprised if I put it in Haddonfield or Cherry Hill or Moorestown. Like the city of Camden doesn't deserve it. So I think arts and music is what my children grew up with and most kids grow up with, and I think it's only fair that the kids in the city of Camden grow up with the same thing.
I was very welcoming of theater and very welcoming of theater here. Plays were put on and life was lifted and people were inspired.
Art is a part of being fully human. Everyone should have access, no matter what your circumstances, to encounter art, but also to have creative opportunities, to be a maker. I think when a person becomes a maker in whatever way they do it, it changes you. Now I've changed the world in some way by creating something. And I think particularly in a place where people may have come to feel very disempowered, very, very marginalized, to have an opportunity to be a creator, I think can really be revolutionary.
The summertime is coming, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and the wild
Achievement requires sacrifice. It means the shouldering of a burden, the transport of intention towards a place not always of one's advantage, but to the benefit of others.
I think a lot of people also fear what's gonna be when Father Doyle passes. You know, the people that have been grandfathered in with him are like, you know, is Waterfront South still gonna be Waterfront South? You know.
And the other thing he's always said that I agree with is that if you're a priest in Haddonfield, there isn't as much to do. The sidewalks are perfect, you know, the buildings are perfect, you know, the playgrounds are in wonderful shape, you know, the schools are good. You come down here, there's always something to do. There's always something to do.
I think he said once, like, farmers never retire.
So I don't know what he means by that, but I have a funny feeling he seems to be farming people rather than the land. He'd have given up on the land long ago, but he hasn't given up on people.
If you think of someone who came into the city of Camden, who was able to have a school here, educate children for the past 60 years. And it doesn't matter if you can pay $1 or you can pay $100. It doesn't matter to Father. You get educated and you are taken care of.
If we could replicate Father Doyle and have a Father Doyle in every community in America, I am certain that this place would be a much better world because of his heart, because of his care and concern for others, and because he's really led the way by example.
He's given people the opportunity to follow through with their desire to help their fellow man.
What's going to help Camden move forward in a meaningful way is going to be more of that sweat equity than the private equity of just money. If throwing money at Camden could fix it, it would have been fixed a long time ago. But what it really needs is it needs people to come in with the supporter resources, but to embrace it with human contact and not just give things that you think are going to work, but help people stand up.
There will never be a time when people like Michael J. Doyle will not be needed, because there will never be a time without problems. Old ones are solved, new ones arrive. Wherever in the city of Camden he encountered them, Father Doyle thought first not of his own standing, his personal safety, but for the welfare of his congregation and community, and of the larger community embracing the world. He himself embraced the world while confronting it. He met it head on, with courage, love, and a poetic devotion to truth. Throughout his life, he looked around and said, I must do my bit. And whether he was fighting poverty and injustice, or providing housing and education, or beautifying a community, he put himself, body and soul, into the task of simply doing it. He became the Heart of Camden.